This video right here can save you a whole lot of heartache, a whole lot of grief, and a whole lot of money if you pay attention and take heed to the warning I'm about to give you. Hi, Brett here, and today we are going to talk about humidity, or rather the lack of it. If you live in an area where, and this is something that people just don't seem to know about. If you live in an area that's dry, normally dry, or you live in an area like I do in Western Pennsylvania, where the winters are usually brutal, the air gets dry, your skin gets dry, your sinuses get dry, and that affects your instruments. You have to humidify your instruments. I taught a workshop a few weeks ago on something else. I got into the humidity and the whole workshop veered that direction because so many people were asking questions about how to humidify their instruments. And if you do not humidify your instrument, the question is not if your instrument will crack. The question is when your instrument will crack. And you really need to understand that. You need to humidify your instruments. I remember a few years back, we had a very brutal winter, and I know 7 people personally, either students or people I just knew, whose instruments cracked. I know there were 2 or 3 hammered dulcimers, top cracked, mountain dulcimers, the edges cracked, because the wood dries out and it destroys the instrument. It's a very slow process. And it's one, again, most people just don't know about or think about. So here's kind of how it works. One, if you have a laminate instrument, you know, a solid top instrument does sound better than a laminate top instrument. When you have a laminate top instrument, you have wood, glue, wood, glue, wood, glue, wood, glue. So it really strengthens the wood. But a solid top instrument has just the grains, which allows the vibrations to go through those grains. That also has, it's a lot weaker in that you don't have that laminate strength. So when it's dry, that wood shrinks. When it is a lot of humidity, it expands. One of the things you'll notice with hammered dulcimer, if you have a lot of humidity, your notes will actually go sharp because the wood's expanding, the strings are stretching. That's it. And if the wood is dry, it will contract and shrink and your instrument will go flat. Now I know your instrument goes sharp or usually flat just because strings stretch. But I remember the first time I noticed that my strings were sharp, and I thought, well, this is odd. And it's because I had a lot of humidity. Humidity is usually not the problem, it's the lack of humidity. So you want to make sure that you humidify your instrument, especially if you have a solid top instrument. Actually, just you need to humidify your instruments. So there's a lot of different ways to do that. Your instrument should be humidified at 50%. If you are humidifying your house and you have a humidifier in your furnace, just pretend that doesn't exist. They don't usually go up to 50%. 50% is not maybe what a person would have, but it's what your instrument needs. So there are a lot of different ways to humidify your instrument. The point is you really just need to do it. One example of a humidifier, and I actually don't have any of the smaller ones handy. I may have one sitting around somewhere, but there's something called a dampit. It's a long green tube. I'll put a link to it beneath on the video. And there's a sponge inside of it. You soak it in water. You take paper towels and you make sure they're not wet, but it stays damp inside, and you insert that into your instrument. There are guitar humidifiers. There's little cases where it's hard to explain what's inside. I'm not even sure what it is. You put water in it, drain it off, snap the lid. You have to keep it in your case. The reason I don't use, for the most part, those kind of small humidifiers is because they're very easy to forget. In other words, you could put it in your case, and if it's, it doesn't stay wet forever, you can put it in your case and then you forget about it. because you would have to continually, add water to it, completely re-wet it every 2 or 3 days. So I use a room humidifier, which I'll show you in a minute. The room humidifier is great for a lot of reasons because it also helps you breathe. It keeps your skin softer, everything else. So I'll show you what I use. This is a Sunbeam. I picked this up at Walmart, and they're probably $50, maybe not even that much. They're not that expensive. And this would be considered a room humidifier. And this is what I use because I have several instruments on the wall, and I just keep my instruments out. I have a hammer dulcimer set up in here, and it's just easier for me to use this. And you basically just fill this here. This one's actually empty. You fill those with water. Your switches here. You've got the you can set how high, how much humidity you want. I know that you need to be careful where you put your instrument in the wintertime. Actually, in the summertime as well. You don't want to put it near a heating vent. You don't want to put it in a window where direct sunlight comes down on it. Mine is actually in front of a window, but I have woods to the left, and sun really doesn't come in that window at all. So that's fine. But you don't want direct sunlight shining down on your instrument. Again, this is something people just don't get. Years ago, I sold cases that your mountain dulcimer case, the gig bag, slid into, and also your hammer dulcimer cases, and they were hammer dulcimer covers, so that if you were playing outside in the summertime and you went and took a break, you could cover it. And it was a reflective material. And I remember being at a festival selling these. I couldn't sell them for the life of me. People would walk by and they would have their mountain dulcimers in black gig bags strapped to their back like a backpack, and they were walking, and the sun was literally cooking their instrument. And I remember saying to a few of them, you need to be careful because that can hurt your instrument. And they literally just brushed me off and said, oh, it's fine, it's in a case. And they're cooking their instrument. So again, people just don't get this because people don't think it's going to happen to them. And every single person who this has happened to has said to me, oh, I can't believe this has happened to me. Well, that's because you didn't think it would happen and you didn't take the precaution to do it. Something you might want to invest in is called a hygrometer. And a hygrometer measures the humidity in a room, depending on how expensive one you get. I have seen them for $5 at Walmart, and I've seen them for $300. I wouldn't put a lot of trust in a $5 hygrometer, and I'm not saying that I would go out and buy a $300 one either, but I have compared them side by side, and when the cheaper ones say it's at 50%, the more expensive ones may be around $50 or so, say it's about 30%. And that was a while back, so they may have come up with some others. I was just on Amazon and I saw them range from about $8 up to $200. They had some for around $30, which would probably be a good, I'm just guessing, would probably be a good one. But that will give you a true reading as to the humidity. And again, you want to keep it at 50. You don't want it directly blowing on the instrument. If you have a hammer dulcimer set up, you don't want the humidifier, couldn't think there. You don't want the humidifier directly under it. Just put it off to the side where it's hitting that general direction. So I hope this has helped. Again, I could tell you story after story of people. I know a lady who had a Blue Lion mountain dulcimer. She leaned it on the outside of her fireplace in the winter, so it wasn't directly in front of the heat, but it was enough on the side, and every time she put her finger down, like to anchor her finger, you would hear a creaking sound because the inside, the glue, would start falling apart. Ironically, today, as I was actually recording this, I was doing a video on humidity. One of my students came down because their banjo, one of their strings was completely dead, and she didn't know why, so she brought it down, and I looked at it, and the problem was humidity. The neck had bent instead of, that's another whole subject, but instead of having the concave, it was this way, it bent the other direction. And we fixed it, I adjusted it for the truss rod and everything. But what I'm telling you is you need to humidify your instruments. And I know I keep saying that, and I keep saying that, and I keep saying that. And I'm going back to what I said when we started. It's not if your instrument will be damaged, it's when your instrument will be damaged. So I hope this has helped. If you like this video, if you think this video helped you, please subscribe, please like this video, please share it, and please comment. If you have any experiences of your own or any suggestions, please feel free to put them beneath. If you have any experiences of your instrument cracking, and I hope we don't hear too many of them, but I would be interested in hearing about it. So thank you again so much.